Welcome to the Signpost Inn podcast, everyone. This is the show where we help you lift your gaze from the chaos of life and sustain your faith in Jesus so that you can connect more deeply with God and others. I'm Brandon Booth, your host, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, my regular co-hosts. I have with me today Peter Gamble, I have Matt Boland, and my wife, Leave. Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Hey, everybody.
It's fun to have you all back on the back porch. It's kind of cool. I think this is I don't know if this is the second one in a row or not, Peter, because we've been doing a lot of interviews interspersed, but I know that there's an interview coming out about wine and the word soon, or it just came out. I can't remember which. So we're kind of excited about those things. I want to say to our listeners, thank you for the reviews you've been leaving. I don't have new ones to read this time around, so I have another plea to you to continue leaving reviews for us. We're going to leave a link in the show notes to take you directly to our podcast page on Apple Podcasts, and then you can click the review from there. You have to scroll to the bottom. There's a little spot that says review, but it's really easy to do once you're there. So we'll leave a link directly to our show. Please leave us a review. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. I want to thank the people who have emailed me. It was so good to hear from you that you've enjoyed the show, that the show has been beneficial to you. Heard from one friend who, read our book, started reading the book, and then his wife grabbed the book out of his hands, started reading it, wouldn't give it back to him until he was done, which I thought was kind of cool. That's kind of neat. I like that. That's fight over our book. That's the right thing to do.
Okay,
so
wait, I got to interrupt you, Brandon. I'm sorry. So speaking of your book and speaking of asking for people to give reviews, I was actually listening back to one of the podcasts where we were recording, and we made the joke of you progressing in your desperation. You started out with pleading, and then it went to threatening, and I think the next stage is bargaining, right?
Oh, that's true.
So it's like, if you leave a review, we'll send you our book. We'll give you a link to our book.
That might be a good idea. Maybe that's what I do, is like you leave a review and you send me evidence of it, and we send you a copy of the book. Is that what we do? Is that okay to do?
I don't know. I just was laughing because last time you were asking for reviews, we noted the progression, and I'm like, what's next in the progression? Bargaining.
Denial. I don't need your reviews. Reviews are useless.
I love it.
But I know that the stages of this are not linear, so I can go to anyone at any time. It's like, it's just, okay. Anyway, enough of that. Thank you all for reviewing. Thank you for your kind words. We greatly appreciate it. Please continue to do so. It is spring. We are in a spring fundraiser season, and I would love to ask for your donations. This show is listener supported. If you have benefited from what we offer, then please head over to signpostin.org/donate and become a monthly supporter. That really helps us be able to continue to do this. So please head over there, signpostin.org/donate. Again, we'll put a link in the show note. I know we noted last time, and it's worth noting again, a $5 a month donation is actually pretty significant for us. And that's less than an egg sandwich with your best friend. If you would like to join us on the porch and have an egg sandwich, that'd be like $15 right now, guys. So, anyway, are jokes about eggs not funny anymore? Is that?
I thought it was excellent.
Okay. I want to say one last thing, just updates. We have a cool service that is called Pod Snacks, like as in snack on your favorite pod. And you can subscribe to it, and it gives you like an AI summary of what the show is so that you can read it in your email, which I have found to be incredibly useful. We'll leave a link to this too. You can just subscribe to our show. You get an email every time a show is released, and it gives you a summary of what's in it, and you can even read a full transcript. It has not replaced my podcasts. It actually helps me know which ones I want to listen to. It's really cool. So check it out. All right. Today's topic is going to be, we don't have a good name for this yet. It's like, I want it now. The idea of this year's theme has been spirituality. I want more what? It's more ... And the themes of recent episodes have been around the hardness in the world, the sin and the difficulty in the world. And we've even tried to make that into good news. As we are in the Easter season, the question is something like, okay, I know that the resurrection is coming. I know that there will be good at the end. I know even that I'm sort of released from having to do the hard work of fixing the world because it's not my job, but it's still bad. Like pain still is existing. So that's the topic for the show. We will jump into that in just a minute. Let's do some brief updates. How are people's lives going? What's going on in your life? I'm going to start in the same order I did that I see you on my screen. So Peter, what's up with you, man?
Yeah, recently, Rachel and I got to take a little bit of time off to do a beginning of the year retreat, even though it's not quite the beginning of the year. Historically, we've tried to make a beginning of the year retreat happen as a couple for the past 5-6 years that we've been together. And it's been really good, fruitful. So we obviously have Benjamin, our 9-month-old son, around. And so that became a little bit harder to figure out how we were going to make that work. So we ended up taking like 2 individual like retreat days where I went out camping one night and got to just build a fire, talk with God, journal, sleep under the stars, and enjoy some time and reflection away. And then the next day I got to come back and hang out with Benjamin all day, and Rachel got to head out and do her thing. So that was really good. Different than what we're used to it looking like. But for me, I know I get like this restlessness if I haven't been outside doing manly like camp bushcraft things in like a little while. And I definitely just really enjoyed, like, I built a fire with my flint and steel. Like, this was this was a success. Plus, it was restful and recharging. So I'm really grateful for that. So that's what's new in my life as of this last week. And there you go.
Cool. Thanks. Matt, what's going on with you, man?
The biggest thing that's going on in my life right now is I'm working in overdrive on various projects that I have. I've talked about this several times before, but behind me I have a stack of books about this tall, just short of 12-inch stack of books that I'm working through. For some reason, in the past week, I have been so energized by that. Normally, it's like, ugh, it's homework. And here was the turning point. I was talking to my friend David at church about how much I hate writing. And there's just something about perfection paralysis that sets in, and I just sit there and I can't make anything happen. And he was like, have you tried like speech to text stuff? And I was like, no. And I mean, I've known this technology I use it to text my wife all the time. Well, finally, I'm like, all right, why not give it a go? And I cranked out 7 pages this week just doing that. And something about it just hit the flow button. And I'm like, it's coming out of me and it's getting done. And something about that energy is exciting. And so I'm just pumped. And it's not perfect, right? I can only do like a little bit, like a couple of sentences at a time before it automatically cuts off on me because it's just the stock Mac voice to text thing. So if any of our listeners have something better that they use, that they love, that's better than just what comes standard on a Mac, let me know. But even with the starts and stops, I'm loving it.
Huh.
I'll give you all an update on if it actually helps me make a better sermon or not.
That's cool.
It's still me. I'm still the source, but at least it's going faster and I'm able to get more on the page, and hopefully that'll translate to better content.
Wow.
I don't know.
I've always found that difficult because it's like I can't edit it as I go.
See, that's what paralyzes me.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, this is the wrong word. I can't think of the right word. And so for me, I'm the opposite. It's I'll clean it up later. I'm just gonna bleh.
Cool. Oh wow, that's cool. Okay.
See, I just never clean anything up. I just do that process and then send it out.
Yeah, I get your emails, Peter. I know.
I think Google Docs has a transcript, like a built-in voice to text that doesn't cut you off. Like you can just keep talking. So I think. Anyway, Leave, what's up with you?
Oh, well, in the writing vein, sorry, Matt, I've accomplished some writing and it's done. Just finished an article for the Lutheran Witness blog, which I guess we'll put a link to. about Easter feast and about kind of some Lenten reflections and then how to host an Easter feast with some real practical stuff, and linked it to a something through us where you can give us your email and we'll send you recipes for Easter feast, the schedule of when to do what through Lent and all that kind of stuff. So if you don't even know what that is, go check it out in the show notes and you can see what's up there. So anyway, got to finish that article and send it off, and then I'm working on another one, which is cool. But the more exciting thing is that I cut a perfect straight line in laminate flooring and pulled up a square so that I can put in some tile where the laminate flooring was damaged. And that's actually the highlight of my week. I was very proud of myself.
That might be a miracle.
My hand was guided with the X-Acto knife. It was great.
It was pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Genuinely,
Thank you.
genuinely well done. I will give a brief update just that have been having some great conversations with folks, other spiritual directors. I had opportunity to do an Ash Wednesday meditation at the beginning of Lent, and then also had several workshops on anxiety come out, which by the time this airs, they'll be over, but I want to call people's attention to them because we're going to do more things like this. So keep an eye on our event calendar because these workshops are really cool. We do these free things, Sunday afternoons, 30 minutes. Great way to just get a personalized content that hits home. So yeah, I've been thoroughly enjoying building those things and giving them. They're super fun. All right, let's jump into today's topic. Again, the question is something like, yeah, I get it. Resurrection's coming, but now what? Like, what about in the meantime, right? That's why we called our email that comes out every Tuesday, In the Meantime. But I think in particular, the question is something like, I still feel suffering and things still suck. I have had many conversations recently with people who it's like, it's all well and good to talk about the future. It's all well and good to talk about God's presence, but I'm burnt out at my job. My kids are hurting. My marriage is difficult. There doesn't seem to be any hope in this present world that things are going to get better. What if I have to stay in my dead-end job? And I think the natural response that many of us have, I know that I have, is, okay, so what am I doing wrong? How do I work harder to fix it? And isn't promise supposed to be here and now? Like, isn't there supposed to be some kind of solution here and now? And if not, that kind of sucks. So does that resonate? Is that making sense what the question is? It's a variation on the question I think we've been asking all along, because the growing interest in spirituality in our day and age, I think sometimes is driven by this question. I've tried all these other things to find happiness and satisfaction in this world. Nothing else has worked. So let me try the spiritual answer.
I think that's absolutely true. I actually was just this week listening to a couple of interviews with Ayan Hirsi Ali. Some people may be familiar with her, but she was a former Muslim and now a former atheist. She got her education in the West and became a very staunch atheist because she saw the dangers of religion from her former religion. But the short story of her conversion to Christianity is, I was spiritually bankrupt. I was doing everything that secularism offered me, going to counseling, finding success in my work, and alcohol. But ultimately, she discovered, I need God. And so it's a powerful story. It's really interesting, and I really highly recommend you just kind of Google her story because it's pretty powerful. But that's essentially what she's saying is, I tried everything on offer and it left me empty. And I saw where it was going and I said, wow, I need Jesus.
Yeah. This is where this conversation is tricky because that is true. I think I could say I personally have found a greater peace and satisfaction, which is why we're doing the ministry that we're doing, using the quote unquote spiritual path, whatever that means, right? But I think the nub of the question for today is, what about the fact that even though I think I have found greater peace and satisfaction in this life through Jesus, with Jesus, then there's that time that it doesn't feel that way. And honestly, it feels that way more often than not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and I think it's maybe a good point to kind of recap what we talked about last week, or the last time we had the discussion of how long, O Lord. And it's worth recognizing the reason we have that question is because, like we said last time, is sometimes it feels like we're going through hell. And for people who have been Christians for a long time, kind of on the flip side, like you're saying, Brandon, sometimes it's like, well, when do we get to heaven? When do we get to the promised land? Right? Like the Israels were asking. And that's what we're asking, I think, right?
Yeah, I think I'm tracking. The question is formulated in my mind. It's sort of, and let me know if this is aligning with what you guys are saying. It's sort of like we've talked about how various spiritualities offer this idea of freedom, but really they end up all being the same system of trying to achieve something of ourselves, gain the approval that we want, blah, blah, blah. And they all sort of burn us out or they just don't work, right? And so we've like, all right, there isn't this achieving, working towards something type of thing. And yet, what we believe about the true message of Christianity is that the nature of the gospel is freedom. Christ has set us free. So we're like kind of stuck between these polarities of like, I really feel this angsty like search for freedom, and it's so easy to want to do something to make it attainable. And I reject that, right? We've talked about that enough to say that doesn't work. Let's reject that. So what then is the nature of our freedom as Christians? What can we actually expect for the remainder of our lives? Is there an experience of that freedom, or is it freedom in name only as we walk through this really challenging life as sojourners? Is that in line with what you're saying, Matt and Brandon, or am I taking it a different direction?
I think we're on the same path, right? Brandon, is that kind of where we're going here?
Yeah, I guess the distinction I'm making from last time's discussion is sort of moving it into is there a distinctive about the Christian spirituality? Does it have a different answer to this question? Right? Like, how long, oh Lord, I want to validate that's a feeling we all have. It's okay. I want to release you from the pain of feeling shame and guilt around asking that question. Now I want to say, well, what is the actual Christian spirituality's answer to the fact that we're not in heaven already?
So I feel like we're talking about something that sounds like theology, but like 1 millimeter away from it in our incarnate life. This is our experience in normal daily stuff where we have a challenge. Maybe it's something we want to overcome. Brandon and I were talking about this on our walk this morning. And so we say, how was it you put it, Brandon? It was so good. It was like we face even a behavior in our life. Like, let's take it away from what we usually call spiritual, just a behavior in our life. We want to change. It's not working. And mostly we feel bad. That's the biggest thing. Like, we feel bad about it. And so we find a way to work harder. We're going to solve it by doing something more. And clearly, I feel bad because I am bad, right? That must be the problem. This is the sort of false thinking that we have. I feel bad, therefore I am bad. And the only solution is I'm going to work harder at either the same thing, or I'm going to find a methodology that's going to help me to feel better by working harder. And I really resonate with that. I think it's not just what we would call the spiritual realm, but I think that's the distinctive of Christianity is that, keeping a tidy house and my frustration with it not being tidy is the spiritual realm. We're frustrated about that. Brandon, speaking to his directees, it comes down to that. Why isn't my life working for me? The job I have, why isn't it making me feel peaceful and happy? But the solution that our fallen nature comes up with is it's my fault 100%, and I need to work harder, do something more. Or totally numb myself away from the question.
Yeah, or
at
it's
all. I think
hopeless.
that's the other, it's the other common solution. But I think the other, spiritual options, in my experience so far, are new ways to work hard. So I think there's a Christian distinctive there somewhere else. Take it away.
Yep. Well, again, in some ways, you and I are so alike, and in some ways, we're so opposite, because whenever I here's more ways to work hard, my response is, well, I'm already failing. I'm out. I'll just lay here and die.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the email that came out not long ago about being if I receive grace, aren't I going to be a grace potato and not do anything? But that actually the anxiety about, resisting forgiveness and grace and freedom doesn't make me go and do anything. Resisting it turns me into why don't you put it, Brandon, an anxiety pretzel. And I'm
Yeah.
lying on my couch or on the floor, Matt. I'm sorry. I'm picturing you actually lying on your floor going, that's it. I'm dying now. So that we're terrified into inaction.
Yeah. What I think the question is, okay, I've listened to you guys and I'm hearing it and I hear that the world is sinful, that I'm broken. It's not my responsibility to fix myself. Okay, I've done all that. Shouldn't that have solved my problem? That's what I feel like the question kind of boils down to. It's like just what you were saying, Lee. We're always turning back around and saying, but shouldn't that have fixed it? And if it didn't, well, then what did I do wrong? And I need to work harder, try more, find a new solution. It's like this. I heard it this way. I want to engage more of God's grace and receive his grace. I want that to be the thing that I practice more. I need to set aside more time to do prayer that receives that grace every morning. And the answer is like, well, sure, yes, right. But the implicit judgment is, then I'll feel better. Then I'll never feel bad again. And if I am feeling bad, that's quantitative measurement that I'm not doing enough of that prayer that I should be doing. So I'm not doing spirituality right either. The answer I want to say is that what Christian spirituality is, what receiving grace is letting go that paradigm. What prayer is relaxing your attention, not constraining your attention. The metaphor that I had about this was, in North Korea, the state television is always on. Like, you have a television in your house and it's always on. You can't turn it off. You can turn the volume down, but you can't turn it off. And the state propaganda is always playing. And it's like, that's the way our minds and our lives are. There's this constant channel propaganda of sadness, of fear, of negativity going on. You can't turn it off. What you can do is move away from the tunnel vision. You can tune it out in a sense. Like, you can move away from the tunnel vision of fixating on that and see the bigger world. And that's receiving grace. And that doesn't mean that it's going to fix your problems. Meaning, if your problem is, it hurts. We should have recorded our walk leave. We articulated it better there.
I told you, man. We talked for about half an hour and then he was like, all right, good podcast.
It seems to me that the crux of it lies around our expectations. We're talking about this implicit human nature thing that expects our lives to get better, for us to be experiencing more peace. And so much of what we're doing is trying to adjust our expectations to match reality, to match the truth of God's word and what he says he's done for us and to us. But it just seems like we're constantly fighting our natural set of assumptions about reality.
You know what I would say, Peter? That really cracked it open for me. The implicit assumption that we should be making progress. Like, that is just the constant assumption everywhere. I should be making progress. And I would argue, if we're honest, the universal experience is we don't make progress. And I hear everybody say, well, wait, I've made progress in this area. I've made progress. And it's like, well, sure, totally agree. There are small pools or pockets of progress for which we should celebrate and be grateful. But I would just say, isn't the universal experience that cumulatively those progresses are never enough? There's a sense in which progress is not actually being made, or we have the feeling that, or when we enter a phase where we're regressing, we're like, well, lie down and die, or that's completely useless. Regressing, Whereas I think scripture says progress as you perceive it is not the point, and regress is not necessarily bad in the grand scheme.
Okay. Let's say I'm tracking with you there, Brandon, and leave. But I kind of want to say, all right, show me that. Like how, because you're right. Everything in me says regression, obviously bad. That's obviously failure. Prove me wrong, or correct my thinking, because if our listeners are anything like me, you sound like you're talking crazy.
Yeah. The first thing that I would jump to is simply how is Peter saying to Jesus, surely you should not die. Surely that shouldn't happen. How can a journey deeper into suffering, deeper into pain, deeper into shame, eventually resulting in death, be progress? How can that be progress? How can that be good? And it is, I'm going to pull a Soren Kierkegaard here. It is cheating to reference what we know from history happened. In other words, in order to truly understand how God works, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of the apostles at the time, because we stand in relationship to the progress God is making in our lives as the apostles stood in relationship to Christ's work before he died. So if you can pause what you know happened, that he rose again from the dead and that worked the salvation of the world, and put yourselves in the shoes of Peter before knowing any of that, then Peter knows what we feel like now. How can regression be good? How can my daughter going through great suffering be good? How can me living in a dead-end job be good? How can my divorce be good? There is a sense in which it is not good. Like we know this thing in its isolation, Christ's death in its isolation, is not good. The defeat of evil is something else, but does that make sense what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if you were Peter at the time and you asked me, prove it to me that Jesus, my Messiah, going to a cross is good, it'd be like,
Wait and see.
yeah, it's like, it's a question of faith.
I think I'm tracking because something in what you just said instantly sparked Romans 8, that God works all things to the good. So that's at least all right. I'm tracking with you now. Go ahead, Leaf.
Oh, I was just going to say, Brandon, you set up a great pattern there, because I think that's the story of every redemptive act the Lord does. I'm thinking specifically about the flood. God says, this thing is coming. It's going to be terrible. And then you have Noah and his family preparing for a long time with worse and worse news coming. They start their project, but it becomes pretty obvious after a little while to their neighbors what they're doing. And they're building this thing for this terrible disaster that's coming. And how can anybody in Noah's family be going, oh, good, I'm glad God is making us prepare for a terrible disaster. Yay. But of course, then comes the restoration of humanity, both literally through the flood. Noah and his family are saved, and that's the beginning of the rest of humanity, but also the flood prefiguring baptism. And baptism is talked about as drowning. You go underwater with the Lord and you die and you are resurrected. But you die first and you go down. And I think what's helpful to think of is that we live perhaps in the process of going down. We just made it through Lent and Easter. Lenten is a long process of going further and further down. Nobody thinks that they're, I don't think, ascending the hill during Lent. I think that everybody recognizes that we're diving deeper into the wounds of Christ. And that process, Brandon, you're right. I think before every giant redemptive act in Scripture is a period of descent. And why would we expect different from our lives? It's just that the victory hasn't come now. The victory is later. So maybe the difference in paradigm is that it's valid to think that we are still being saved, not just that the victory, like we're past the victory and now we're only in the risen life, because our experience doesn't bear that out.
Yeah. I think the hard thing to swallow, though I want to pack that up and just say it's not that hard to swallow. It's not as, that's saying I don't want to. The thing I don't want to swallow is what Scripture says frequently. We are being saved through suffering. Like, or we are being sanctified, or we are progress is being made by what we perceive as regression. So it's Romans 5. It's all of the places that talk about suffering being good for us, that we live in the pattern of Jesus. And I just want to, I guess what I'm trying to, yeah, exactly, right? I'm just looking at Romans 5 right now. We boast in our afflictions because we know that affliction produces endurance. Endurance produces proven character, and proven character produces hope. The assumption there is that that makes me feel better, but we're forgetting that it's talking about afflictions. I'm not feeling better there. It's the feeling worse that is producing these things. It's Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always, not because you're getting better, but because the Lord is near. In everything, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And I think that's that peace that surpasses all understanding that matters there, because I don't understand how it can be peaceful to embrace affliction, to embrace the suck. But it is.
Well, and the verse that came to my mind, you went to Romans, I went to Hebrews chapter 12. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with endurance the race set out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Recently, our church did a fun thing where we were invited in this Wednesday night class to try and envision, let the scriptures speak to us in an image. Like if you were to make an icon, so to speak, or if you were going to make a comic book panel of this, what would it look like? And we were in the book of Hebrews, and we came to this passage, and I got really wrapped up in that image of Jesus running ahead of us, being that model, and being surrounded by all the saints that have run the race before us, cheering like madmen, And yeah, I mean, I've never run a marathon. I mean, you can tell that by looking at me. But I've known people who have done marathons and long distance running. And just like you said, Brandon, there is a certain large amount of suck that they just, like, I'm in it. I'm taking it because of the reward. It's because of the prize that they're running for. And I think the writer of Hebrews has hit on a perfect metaphor there.
And I think the perspective shift too, right? It's like the suck of that run isn't going to go away. It's going to stay with you. This was the analogy that Leave and I were using this morning is very similar to that. It's like, okay, you have a broken arm, right? Your arm is in a cast. It's going to get better. But right now it hurts. You're taking ibuprofen or the Tylenol or whatever, but it still hurts. And that's like the long distance runner, on mile 10 of 50. It hurts. And everything in your body is screaming, this sucks. Make it stop. I don't want to hurt anymore. And I can't stop that. I can't make the pain stop. But what I can do is come along and be like, hey, I know it hurts. I love you. You want to come watch a movie with me? You want to come hang out? Like, I'll come sit with you and chat. And what that does is what the runner has to do kind of consciously. This is done now through community. It sort of relaxes your attention away from the pain that's demanding your attention and allows you to see the people all around you, the people along the racetrack yelling your name, the friends saying, I love you. It's okay. We'll sit with you while it hurts. And I think that's the metaphor for this life is like, it hurts at times. I really don't like it. Make it stop.
And going to the idea that the race is happening all around you, I'm picturing literally, Matt and Brandon both, that was really helpful to think of spectators. We think of running the race, and I think we think of just being the runner, all the pain and stuff that would be with being stuck inside that body, paying attention to all the things that are happening to that body by pushing it so hard. But there's a much bigger thing happening all around you. The sky is blue. If you're running the Boston Marathon, you're surrounded by really cool buildings. Like there's more to life and to the race than the pain. And I think that relaxing our attention on our current suffering, which is still real and we're not ignoring it, but putting it in its proper place, which is, yeah, it's something that's going to continue, whether that means I'm suffering because of sin that keeps happening in my life, because I know everybody wants to say, like, but you shouldn't suffer from continued sin. Well, no, you're going to be oppressed by that too. But to relax my attention away from those things because of the bigger context of the real world. And I think, Brandon, that's what you and I were talking about this morning as well. Reality, right? Instead, be aware of this bigger world that he's put us in, which is turning our attention toward the Lord, turning our attention toward the bigger reality. We had a friend who came to a retreat a few years ago now who was describing her faith journey. She had not been raised with any kind of spiritual life, really, but certainly no Christianity. And, it just sounded so impossible to hear her say this, but she really meant it. When the Holy Spirit opened her eyes to the reality of the gospel, she literally said, I had never seen, have I said this before, told this story before? I'd never seen blue before. I'd never seen green before. And then I stepped outside knowing that Jesus loved me, and trees are green and the sky is blue. And she literally said that she's, not poetically, the world had been black and white. But now, turning the attention away from the anxiety, the fear, all the sufferings that still exist into this bigger reality of, oh my gosh, I'm loved. And there's a reason that I'm actually on a path. I'm on a race. I'm going somewhere. Showed her the beauty that actually physically exists in the world. So it's not a smaller attention focus to look at Jesus and try to get out of this world only looking at this one thing, but the world itself becomes more beautiful.
Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any moral excellence and if there's anything praiseworthy, the CSB says, dwell on these things. And the word dwell there has this kind of connotation. I was looking it up. This connotation of like take into account, reckon with. So it's the sense of like, cast your net of what evidence is out there more broadly. And that's what I'm hearing you say, Leave. Like exactly what Paul is saying. Let your attention take in more of reality and see. Reckon with the fact that the sky is blue and that God is good and that the facts of Christ are real. Now, I mean, there's another question here, but it's like he's not admonishing us to a practice of hyper focus, though I want to make room for those practices because they actually help. Like to train one's focus sometimes does take concerted effort. Like it takes concerted effort to notice certain things. You have to practice it, but the goal is not that's not the goal. It's the relaxing later that comes from that. That's the point. And I think the dwelling has got that idea there. So the encouragement is something like, yes, the world is full of suck. My life is full of suck. That's actually God's work in our lives. In the meantime, learn to take into account more evidence, a broader picture of what really is happening and who God is and what's good for me. And find the endurance to then make it through, believing that this race ends in glory.
I can't help it, but I'm going to talk about Hind's Feet on High Places again because it is my favorite book. But there's, the premise of that book is Much Afraid goes on a journey to enter the kingdom of love. And the guides that Jesus gives her are sorrow and suffering. And at first she's just appalled. Like, how could you send me on a journey with sorrow and suffering? How can these be my companions? And of course, that story progresses in a really beautiful way. But at one point, sorrow and suffering teach her a praise song. They're on this journey. They're all going through the journey. All three characters are having a hard journey, but they teach her a song of praise and of hope in that journey. And I just love that imagery. I love the idea that we could learn something beautiful and excellent and praiseworthy from sorrow and suffering, something we wouldn't have learned had we not walked with them. It's a great book. Y'all should read it.
You know that the Psalms, the entire, like, the Psalter, the entire book of Psalms, that's what it's called. It's called a book of praises. Like, that's like literally what it means. Like, it's a book of praise. And you wonder, like, how is this a book of praise when you're in Psalm 80 something, where it's really dark and depressing. But that's, we've had a couple of guys on that have talked about the Psalms, and they point out that the Psalms are curated, they're structured. Like, there's different books of Psalms that have been clearly put together to form a narrative, if you will. And the narrative is exactly our lives. It's sort of through the darkness and out the end. And that's why at the end of the book of Psalms, you have a lot of really good praise songs. These songs at the end are like, look at how good God is. But the whole thing is praise. The whole thing. Even the sorrow and the suffering parts. Because even in the valley overshadowed by death, Psalm 23, I love it saying it that way. Even in the valley overshadowed by death, the Lord is with me.
So I think if I were coming to this conversation from outside the faith, I'd be like, Christianity sounds really bleak, and I don't think I want to do that. Except that with our last conversation, we were talking about Christianity facing sin and suffering and saying, yup, it sucks. Speaking to our human experience. We know it's a lie when we're preached the next great quick fix. And I think even if we're listening to this and going, well, guys, this sounds kind of bleak, this actually looks our human experience in the eye. This actually validates, you feel like this thing, this suffering, whatever it is, isn't going away, and it seems like it should have by now. Haven't you earned a little rest or something? I mean, I would just say, yeah, doesn't that answer your human experience? Doesn't that resonate? I'd rather be in a religion that says, it's true, we keep on suffering, rather than one that says, don't worry, either it doesn't exist or I'm going to give you these tools to get past it. Because then we're just pretending. And that's not real hope. The real hope is we're saying, no, there's a bigger reality. And yes, your suffering persists. And yes, the bigger picture is so much more beautiful and alive than us trying to hyper focus on whatever problem it is we think should disappear forever, whether that's poverty or ill health or whatever it is in our own lives.
Leave, I think you said it really well. Coming from the outside, it's like, it sounds like what we're saying is there's no hope. We're just going to suffer and then die. To which I want to respond, yes, but isn't it hopeful? Like, yes, you're right. We are just going to continue to suffer and then die. And then something else, but isn't it kind of hopeful to look that in the eye, not lie about it, not avoid, and then see that it is actually a redemption. You are being made into a hero. I think anyone who has actually tried to deal with real sin in their lives and had any modicum of success around it recognizes that the path to success is through suffering and giving up the desire for success. And if you don't understand what that means, that's okay. But and this is the way anybody who's ever dealt with any kind of sin in their life and had some amount of success, somebody has said to them, I know that doesn't make sense. Trust me and try it. And you go, okay, the only way out is through. That doesn't sound like good news. So you need me to go deeper into the darkness? And they go, yeah, but trust me. And then you get it. You do it. And you're like, yep. Because here's the good news. Like, here's the hope. Yes, you are getting older. You are getting weaker. You are going to die. Yes, you're still going to suffer. You're still going to fail. You're not going to become a saint, quote unquote. And yet that is what is saint making about this world. And that is saint making. God is making you into a hero. And here's what I have said this to a few people recently, because I have watched people, again, suffering with great things in their life, complaining to God. And I don't think it's wrong to complain to God. I've encouraged the complaining because I think that by complaining, you're acknowledging truth and you're bringing it to the right place and you're trusting God to carry you when you have all kinds of curse words for it. And then watched them and been able to say to them, what you just did with me just now was heroic, because you acknowledged the truth. You brought it to Jesus. You put it in his hands and you said, I hate this, and go, Lord. And I want to say to them, there are angels writing poems about you now. You don't get to hear them until later, but that is is that not a story we read? Is that not the movies we make? And to see that you are a hero of the faith, and you're like, I'm not a hero of the faith. I'm sitting here complaining about something minor. And it's like, no, that is a hero of the faith. That is what a hero of the faith does, because that's how the hero gets through the suffering. That's how a hero survives and conquers and has God do the work that God wants to do. It's how Jesus did it, right? I mean, anyway.
Yeah. Look at him in the garden. You know, who knows what all psalms he was praying, saying pretty frankly to God the Father, take this away from me. Jesus said that. I don't want to do this. And how many times have I said that to the Lord? Probably not as eloquently as he did, but I don't know. Maybe he didn't either. Maybe it was just, this is horrible. But what better hero could we possibly have than watching the Lord just in the garden, if he had never even gone to the cross, just watching him there, a tortured soul? I can resonate with that, and I have no question that he's a hero. He wasn't even thinking, it's okay, it'll be over, I'm going to rise. I mean, I guess he knew he was going to, but still, you know, he talk about walking through the valley of the shadow of death with us. There it is right there. And there's our life with also then later on, we know the promise of the resurrection. Perfect life and all things healed.
Amen. And notice that this is how I want to bring it back to the question we've been grappling with all throughout this year so far. What is spirituality? What is heroic about Christ's move there is his surrender to the will of the Father, is his willingness, he's not a hero because of his great defiant resistance with which he stands up and right? That he's the hero that we all know deep in our hearts is heroic because he opens his attention up to the realities of what the Father is doing, even without seeing it with his eyes directly. Faith. That's faith. Like that's the whole point. So the Christian spirituality, the movement of spirituality is a reversal from what the world says progress is a reversal from what the world says the accomplishments should be. It even reverses what we think a hero should be from a worldly, sinful perspective. My contention is that everybody instinctively knows that it is the world's way that is actually backwards, and it is God's way that is actually corrected forwards. And I just sort of want to reclaim that. I just sort of want to say to you, relax your fixation long enough to see a bigger picture. And I think you'll feel it. I think you'll notice it in all the greatest stories. That the Christ figure, the one who lays down his life, is so heroic and inspiring. And I don't think I need to argue for it. I think you'll see it. And when we then lay down our lives like Jesus, what does that actually practically look like? It means I hate my job and my life, and I'm really struggling with my family, and I have no security in this world, and I find the strength to carry on one more day in that sucky suck by saying, Lord, thy will be done. Please take this away from me. And I trust you, and I hate it, but please, and okay. Turn your attention away from, or expand your attention beyond, because that's the thing. It's not turning your attention away from, because I think it still occupies my attention. Expand my attention beyond here's the sin in my life that's the problem. Let me fix this one and everything else will get better. And it's like, well, expand your attention beyond that to, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust and I'll survive one more day. And bizarrely, those sins actually, you're better at taking care of them anyway, but you sort of don't worry about them as much. Like when they cease to be the fixation, that's when they start to dissipate. And that's a different kind of spirituality. It's a different path through life.
The word hope seems to be coming up a lot. And it's sort of this redefinition of what we might want hope to mean. Hope is, does hope make us feel better? And kind of what I'm hearing is, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make you feel better. Hope is sort of the expanding of your vision to include your suffering and pain, but also to include, oh, I'm not alone. Jesus is with me in the valley, overshadowed by death. There is something more. My life is more than suffering. It includes suffering. It's not a denial, but it doesn't, hope isn't this thing that magically makes me feel better. But conversely, what I'm hearing you say, Brandon, is that there is this gospel forwards, not backwards, forwards way of thinking that as we expand our vision to include all of reality, it's not that the suffering gets less horrible, it's that not everything rests on that, because there's more to life.
And doesn't that make you feel better, Peter?
Well, and that's where, like, I don't want to, like, it feels like this weird thing where you say hope doesn't
Yes.
make you feel better, but gosh, when I realize that Jesus is by my side, that I will have a physical resurrection in the future, when I'm like cognizant of these parts of reality that are more than my suffering, I feel less bad. And sometimes I even feel good, right? It's
Yes.
not that the reality has changed. I'm just aware of more of it than the
Yes.
things that are horrible.
Yes. It's like I've grappled or groped around for a analogy for this for a long time, and I still don't have a good one, but the feeling better that what you just described to me, the comfort, that's the word, the comfort that brings is a much more subtle and savory comfort than the kind of comfort that everything else has been trying to bring me, right? I think if I just work out more and get a little bit better looking, I'll have comfort. And it does. It brings a kind of comfort, but it's temporary, it's saccharine. And then what you just described brings a kind of like steak and potatoes comfort. And it's no harm in pointing out that you feel better when I've practiced and released my attention. What you just said, Peter, you said it really well, and I want to stay there. It's no harm in pointing out that I feel better there, because now what I'm feeling better about, the different way of doing things, which is like, yes, I do feel better, more comfort saying that and believing that and acting that way, but it doesn't really matter that I feel more comfort that way, because now I'm free from the grasping for comfort, which is what's really actually comforting.
There's a persistent piece that's underneath all of it, the steak and potatoes idea. We're nourished by that bigger perspective. And now the coming and going of good and bad feelings doesn't have the same significance that it did. And if I face really bad feelings one day, 1 month, 1 year of my life or more, it's not evidence that I'm doing something wrong and I need to work harder to fix it. It's just bad feelings. Yep, we have bad feelings. Part of the bigger picture is that there is still suffering. Part of it. But the picture is so much bigger. The hope is so much more. So I weather the storms, the ups and downs, but nothing is evidence of now it's all gone, or a good feeling. Oh, good. Now I've got the right thing. I'm doing the right thing. If I keep doing this, I'm going to have this feeling forever. Expand my attention. What is the Lord doing in my life, in other people's lives? Loving other people is a pretty important thing in expanding our attention. And so the ups and downs of my particular story, they just don't have that much dire significance. And thank God that it's really a release of that.
To leave this episode on a cliffhanger, I will acknowledge and want to acknowledge for listeners, there are states of depression, there are states of suffering in which it's difficult, if not impossible, to see any of what we've just said as actual comfort. Like I know for some who are, whether it's clinical physical, spiritual, whatever the cause is, I don't even pretend to know, but trapped in kinds of depression or suffering that makes all of this sound trite, makes all of this sound almost insulting. I guess I just want to acknowledge that I know that exists. Please know that we are not saying you're doing it wrong. You'd feel like us if you did it different. That is the exact opposite of what I want to communicate with all of this. So if someone is stuck in this kind of really dark place where there just isn't, this sounds all trite, just know that that's okay too. Like, it's not because you're a weak person or something, whatever the narrative tells you. I would invite and encourage all of us, that person included, to a kind of radical belief. Could you take the leap of faith with us to feel in your bones that the Lord is near? You are not alone. All right. Listeners, thanks for being with us. We, is it too much to say we hope you enjoyed this episode? We hope we found this episode encouraging, or at the very least interesting. So thank you, and may the grace of Christ go with you wherever the road takes you.
Amen.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Signpost Inn Ministries, a nonprofit Christian ministry dedicated to strengthening people's relationship with Jesus and walking with them compassionately on their life's journey. We offer spiritual direction, retreats, and lots of other resources like this podcast. Please visit us at signpostinn.org to learn more. We especially want to thank our generous donors who support our work and keep this podcast going. If you've benefited from something you've heard, please consider supporting us by making a tax-deductible gift at signpostinn.org/donate. We also want to thank Rex Daughtry for creating the original theme music for this podcast. You can check out more of his work at his website, and you can find all the links in our show notes.